Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cashflow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is real estate and renewable energy expert Dakota Malone. Now, Dakota is the founder of Community Solar Authority, a group that consults with and advises land and commercial real estate owners on how to best monetize their assets by integrating solar in an effort to unlock hidden revenue streams. And so with that, guys, I'd like to welcome Dakota Malone to the show. Dakota, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you here. Excited to dive into the world of renewable energy, more specifically solar. And so, before we go down that rabbit hole, because I feel like it's going to be a fairly deep one, let's back it up a little bit. And I'll give you a very brief introduction there. I would kindly ask that maybe you fill in the blanks a little bit, give our listeners a little bit more understanding of yourself, your background, and how you found your way into the world of renewable energies.
Love it. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. And I'll provide a brief background. I've been in the energy space for over a decade, really backing off the belief of sustainability as a whole. And so the concept of sustainability is really more of a principle that I've embedded into my personal life, which really led me into my career and my business. And so, I've been in the energy space for over a decade, like I said, primarily working with large consumers of electricity. And so my company today, for the last half decade, has worked as a full service consultant for some of the most significant solar developers in the country. We have a streamlined interest in deploying renewable assets as those incentives become available across the country. Most of the time, this is at state level legislation, Kevin. So primarily states with these incentives is where investors can be able to find the most and maximized ROI on their projects. And so states that come to mind are New York, Illinois, parts of New England, California. But really what's happening is nationwide adoption of renewable energy. And with that comes a very large opportunity for people who own commercial real estate as well as land to essentially partner with solar developers who are looking to deploy these assets. And obviously those investors can take part in the incentives that are becoming widely available.
Got it. Got it. No, I appreciate that. And let's dissect that a little bit. So you're speaking right now to tens of thousands of real estate owners that are on the show. Runs the gamut of folks that own big industrial centers to office buildings to we own parking garages to maybe even 100,000 plus acres of tracts, raw tracts of land. And so help break it down to elementary terms of exactly how one can benefit, a landowner or a property owner can benefit by working with a gentleman like yourself.
Love it. Yeah, the easiest way that we explain this, and in fact, we've coined the term simple sustainability, because when you think about the world of commercial solar energy, a lot of it is confusing. And so, really, our entire offer and service was built around the idea that we can keep sustainability simple by serving as a bridge and streamlining everything done for those partners that we work with. So, for example, in the world of commercial real estate, when it comes to CNI, a lot of times what's most overlooked is the asset on top of the commercial property, which is the roof. And we use commercial solar as a value add for these investment properties. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a warehouse. It could be a mall. It could be a multifamily unit, which is primarily what we work with. And so when we approach commercial real estate investors, again, not so much on the land side of things, but people with actual brick and mortar commercial properties, the whole idea is that they can participate in renewables, whether that's actually taking on the power themselves or just simply leasing out their space
Yeah.
and really creating value add in their asset without having to do any of the work. So we deliver everything turnkey. And again, we're in the interest of helping these solar developers deploy assets. And so all we do is make sure that the transition into actually building one of these goes smooth. And so oftentimes for commercial real estate groups, they're looking to find additional ways to monetize their property without much effort. And obviously not
Mhm.
having a tenant or toilets on top of their roof is a simple way to create additional value and passive income.
Maybe use is there a recent case study maybe of a project that you worked on? What type of property was it? Ultimately what was the the primary benefit that the landowner or property owner was looking to achieve? Was it just to offset their energy costs of the building? Was it to flow it back into the grid and simply lease out the rooftop space? What was it? I mean, just do you have something that comes to mind that we can share as an
Oh yeah.
example? Okay.
Yeah, we have lots of case studies in different scenarios. I'll start with just a regular old roof lease. And so
Hmm.
this is a play that we like to do all the time. I'll actually come into, commercial real estate groups and essentially do like lunch and learns and educational series. But for example, just 3 weeks ago, we closed on a roof lease for a mall in upstate New York. So large commercial property. In fact, it's more of a sports complex than anything. This was an international investor. He was actually out of Canada, but owns lots of commercial properties in the States. We sat down with him and essentially walked him through the process of monetizing his roof, where again, it is a no investment commitment. So it is something where he can keep his capital expenses on purchasing more real estate or doing what he wants to do in his business. So this is a $0 investment opportunity where we plugged him in and connected him with a solar developer. We are going to lease around 400,000 square feet of that commercial roof space on his mall in exchange for passive income. Now, those prices are always going to fluctuate based on the market. If we need to upgrade his roof, which in this case he didn't because he just recently had a roof replacement, which is obviously the perfect time to put a commercial solar asset
Right.
on. But in this case, after sitting down, it made sense for him to actually start to go through several of his properties. So, what turned into a roof lease for one specific project actually turned into us doing a carport solution. So, very similar. He had a parking lot. We're going to monetize that with carports. Same exact concept, $0 investment. That is going to be passive income where he is simply leasing out that site. We are generating power off of it with our solar asset and then selling that back into the grid. And from, again, what kind of turned into one scenario with people who have portfolios of commercial properties, whether it's parking lots, land, or actual commercial real estates, they can actually monetize in a top down approach, earning passive income on multiple properties.
Using these examples, maybe we could use the mall or sports complex, which was the first project that you did for that client. What is the typical lease that he's into now, as far as as it relates to that roof lease? Is it 20 years with a few options for renewal, or just what does the long term, the long term, I guess, lock in period look like?
Yeah, great question. So the first couple of years are all about completing the studies. And so renewable
Hmm.
assets don't go up overnight. Oftentimes there are environmental studies and other impact studies that need to be done, interconnection studies. One of the biggest problems in the commercial solar world is the amount of upgrades that need to happen at a utility level for their substations. And oftentimes they don't want to make those investments in the upgrade. And so they leave it to solar developers. So the first year or two, if it all goes smooth, typically in 12 to 18 months, we can move past this phase. But that first initial phase is where no development takes place. It is all studies, and a small
Hmm.
milestone payment will be made where we're just doing our studies to make sure an asset can go up. After that is complete and a site looks good, is really when those passive income predictable payments will come. And that comes in the form of a 1 year payment. So this is something that happens annually. And typically these solar assets start off on 20 to 25-year terms.
Okay.
Now, those assets, there are solar farms that were originally built almost 100 years ago at this point that are still active today. And so, as long as that site's good, typically after the 20 to 25-year investment period, the solar developer will just come in and renew that agreement under new terms. But that's an average of what it would look like as far as a leasing perspective.
Okay, then how is the price of that lease determined? I mean, obviously after the studies are done, that 12 to 18 months of due diligence and studies, how does one arrive at what that price per, whether it be square foot or per acre, however that's derived? How does one arrive at that number? And then I guess using the example here of the sports complex, which I think you occupied, you said I think roughly 400,000 square feet on the rooftop. Just trying to back in from an economic sense as to what one might expect. And I know every situation is different, case by case
Yes.
scenario, but just again using this one as an example.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times it is very much custom tailored. And again, that could be between the substation or a roof that needs to be repaired
Mhm.
and also the type of project going up. And I'll give you kind of a tiered approach. So doing a solar farm on a ground mount on flat land is very simple and straightforward to develop. versus doing carports, which involve bending steel and a little bit more advanced technology. Oftentimes, those projects are harder to pencil, which means less of a lease payment. So again, depending on the type of project that we're doing, people can expect anywhere from, we'll call it $10,000 in the as far as a lease payment goes for every maybe 50 to 100,000 square feet. And again, I know that's a very broad range, but it truly is because of it comes down to a market level. For example, we're doing another mall in Rhode Island, and the roof is too old for us to develop. So typically, we're looking at wanting to develop on a roof that is less than 10 years old because we're putting an asset up there for 20 years. Otherwise, it doesn't make economical sense for that specific investor because then they would need to pay to take the panels down, redo the roof, put the panels back up, and we're not in the interest of doing that. And so again, in the purpose of streamlining, which is why we kind of consult on this stuff, in Rhode Island, for example, we went from the roof to the parking lots. The cool thing about carports is, yes, they are more expensive, so the lease payment isn't as fantastic, but it is multi-value add. So not only are they getting the lease payment, but they are potentially being able to plug EV chargers into there, which is now going to be a requirement at retail centers as we, kind of continue down the line. But it's also serving as car coverage as well as snow and ice already done for you as part of that service. And so again, it's a very broad range, but the point is that it is value add. And really what we do is in less than 30 days, figure out for investors what those economics are going to look like. So when people bring us opportunities, another example is a commercial real estate group came to us just yesterday. We had a conversation. They're developing a 300 unit multifamily complex in Texas. And the architect is saying, hey, if you want to do commercial solar, you have to do it now. So what's your decision going to be? They have no experience in commercial solar. They're real estate guys. Mm-hmm. And so they come to us to get those details. And so very quickly, we're able to do a brief study, get a good look at what those lease payments will be in that specific market. And then within 30 to 45 days, come back with tangible advice and studies to be able to say, this is what it's going to look like if you were going to make that investment. And again, it's a $0 investment, but it is time, energy, et cetera.
Sure. And then as far as like the long-term upkeep, I'm assuming like the developer, I mean, like as far as like the equipment
done for
itself,
you.
Yep. Right. It's got it. And how about again, just my head keeps going back to this example of the sports complex. They just put a new roof in place. I guess with the commercial building, you probably expect 25 years out of a roof, but in the event there's repairs that are necessary to the roof, obviously there's some complexities that probably get added with having all that equipment up there. Is some of that gets split with the solar developer, or is that all the the building owner's responsibility still?
Yeah, so the O&M is typically always taken care of in the terms of a roof lease because again, they're the ones that own that asset. And when it comes to, like you said, really the solar asset is adding additional protection to the roof. So again, as far as a double value add, there's racking and bolsters and all of that protection in the event that those need to come down, depending on what type, like if it's insurance because of fire, for example, oftentimes that will be completely covered. But if it's because the actual real estate owner wants to redo their roof halfway through, they are typically going to need to be responsible for doing that as far as taking those panels down.
Is there an opportunity for, just putting my investor hat on now, is there an opportunity for really kind of backing into this, determining, getting with, the top solar developers in the country, finding out exactly what their criteria is, where they're looking to put more assets, right? Where would they like to expand their footprint or get more concentration in particular areas? And then, speaking of maybe raw land, like tracts of raw land, like literally going out and acting as a bird dog and scouting for good tracts of land that would be a good suited fit for the developers or many different developers' criteria, right? Is that an opportunity? Is my head not in the right space with that thought process?
No, it is. That's exactly what we do. Yep. That's part of our full services consulting. So not only do we, and again, based on the legislation. So for example, there's legislation called community solar, which is typically 10 to 30 acres of solar farms. These solar farms, we help our developers identify potential sites, and we'll work with landowners or potential commercial property owners to lease those spaces. So the roof lease works exactly like the land lease, just in different, forms. And what will actually happen is we'll identify those good sites for land. We'll help those landowners form a lease so that they don't have to sell their property and they can monetize it. And then from there, that asset will be built. Our company will also subscribe that. So it's not necessarily one off taker joining that solar farm. It is a conglomerate of typically just like a strip mall, an anchor tenant. So a large consumer of electricity. You could think of municipality,
Mhm.
university, hospital, et cetera, an anchor tenant. And then small businesses and residential homes will actually also join that solar farm in exchange for participating in helping clean the energy grid, which is what that solar farm is doing. They get a guaranteed discount on their electric bill. And so this legislation is known as community solar, and it's becoming very popular. So again, it's been around in states like New York, Illinois for 5 to 10 years at this point. Our management partner, who essentially oversees the operational excellence of these solar assets, actually helped pioneer the program into existence back in 2008, 2009.
Mm.
So that's how long community solar has been around. States are picking it up at a legislative level. So again, we work with landowners that have 10 to 30 acres in states like New York, Illinois, California. And essentially, this community solar legislation is going nationwide because it's a way to help meet the state's renewable energy commitments. They say, hey, we're going to be 100% sustainable in the next 10 years. You can't just go throw solar panels on all residential homes or all commercial properties. Again, the roof, the financing, the shading, there's a million reasons why it won't work. And so that's why the deployment of these renewable assets in the form of solar farms are becoming so popular.
Mhm.
And again, we'll put those on raw land, we'll put those on roofs, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what we do is help people think through that.
Yeah, what I was thinking, what I was thinking of is obviously these developers don't want to buy they don't want to, they really would rather not own the real estate, right? That's not their business. Um, uh, Probably too cost intensive. They'd rather just develop the assets themselves and lease a space, right? Much more cost effective, lighter
That's right.
asset model than owning the real estate. However, real estate guys, right? Like we want to own the real estate. So is there, just thinking of an opportunity where, again, knowing the exact criteria where these developers want to be, going in and proactively negotiating with these landowners to purchase their property, knowing what we might be able to get in the form of a lease from a solar developer, and then basically creating a coupon clipper type investment, to where literally there's no maintenance, easy breezy. We get our reoccurring revenue payments each and every month or year, however they come in. And again, it's very akin to that of what a triple net lease might look like, owning a
Yep.
Starbucks or something along those, like a credit tenant that's paying a set amount for a very long period of time. Again, just very much a coupon clipper type investment. So that's where my head was at.
Totally. And again, we actively do that now. We have a
Okay,
close friend
got it.
who we've done business with. He's a real estate investor. We're helping him think through the process of leasing, or excuse me, purchasing 100 acres and then
Mm-hmm.
immediately turning around and leasing that to a solar developer. So
Got
he's
it.
going to get anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 an acre per year. As I said, he's going to purchase that property for 2-ish million. And so he's going to create a long-term cash flowing asset, which is, I know, what this podcast is all about.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's exactly what he's doing, and that's exactly what we do with other real estate investors.
Got it. Got it. Let's flip to the other side of this. I mean, it all sounds great. I mean, obviously lots of positives, lots of benefits of going down this road. I mean, it's, what are some red flags, or I guess the better way to position this is solar is, it's still kind of the wild west, right? I mean, and so what are some considerations a landowner or property owner might have, things to be aware of? And I know that's what your business is. I mean, your business is to basically help property owners basically play the middleman with developers and ensure that they get a fair lease, the developers get a fair contract. It's win-win deal for all parties. But with that being said, what are some of the most common pitfalls, or I guess again red flags that might come up as it relates to a property owner?
Great question. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, so I've seen it go from the Wild West to I don't even know. It's gotten a little bit more concrete. As these incentives become available, there are many solar developers and other companies that are basically leveling the playing field and making it more fair, which is exactly what we believe in. And so, part of our service is the very diplomatic approach of not only connecting a solar developer to a landowner, but it's actually running an internal RFP so that we're running it against our entire network. So it's not like we have a specific developer in mind every single time, but really more or less we're going to say, okay, Mr. Landowner, we're going to work with you. Our commission is always based off of how many renewable or really how many kilowatts or megawatts get added. And so our payments never affect the landowner's lease payments, and we don't charge for our service. We could, but in the spirit of streamlining and just getting as many renewable assets deployed, we don't care about it because that's not our primary business. And so, an example to, kind of the downsides are, I remember talking to, he owned an aggregation business. So he did like a lot of sediments and stuff for construction as far as like groundwork, but he also had sold, I want to say it was 30 acres to a solar developer, maybe a year and a half before I talked to him. And I was actually speaking to him to join and participate in the community solar legislation I was speaking on. And he said, well, I just sold my land last year, about a year and a half ago, to a solar developer, and I sold it to him for 200 grand. So he sold 30 acres for 200 grand. And the pitfall here is that he could have just leased that property, kept it, received, a lot more money per year on a 25-year basis. And essentially, I'm not going to say he got hoodwinked or scammed per se, but that solar developer had a very clear intention, which is again why we created our service, where it's like, hey, we already consult for these solar developers. We're able to run it and essentially get them to bid to bring you back the highest value. And so again, let us take the diplomatic approach where we can streamline this, make sure that you're getting a fair deal, make sure that there's good practices from the top down. And that's really what we help people avoid in those scenarios. But that's really the only thing that comes up around that.
Okay, got it. No, I appreciate that. And what are some other considerations? I mean, to determine whether or not your particular asset, whether it be a raw tract of land or a improved property, building, parking lot, what have you. I mean, maybe talk about proximity to a substation. Like what is too far, to really even come into consideration.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that we have multiple guides available. And so we have a roof leasing guide as well as a landowner's solar leasing guide that I would happily provide. We can maybe put in the show notes. People can click it, and it's literally a walkthrough guide of your solar leasing checklist, what you want to check for, what you want to be on the lookout for. Again, this is a service we provide done for you. So let's say someone does have land, whether it's 10 to 30 acres in any given state, or as many as 100 to 1,000, because then we get into utility scale, which is the same concept, except an electric utility would be purchasing it instead of a solar developer, which is no problems to us because they're all interconnected. What would happen is people would bring us a piece of land, and they could either do this process themselves and figure it out themselves, or they can use our service and we'll do it all for you. But what we actually do, Kevin, is check. So we say, okay, what is the slope of this land? Is it in marshlands? All of these things are basically qualifying factors. And so very quickly, we can essentially turn around to a landowner and say, hey, this is an opportunity that we would like to help you with, or hey, based on XYZ criteria, it's probably not going to be a good fit. Other considerations are proximity to substations, like you mentioned. There needs to be what's called three-phase power lines, which is the ability to plug in solar farms into that electric grid. So if you're in someone brought me property in the Adirondacks in upstate New York, where I'm from, about a month ago, and this was in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, and there was absolutely no three-phase power lines, right? So it's got to be close to three-phase power lines. It's got to be close to a substation that doesn't need millions and millions of dollars in upgrades. Typically, a substation will need 500,000 to $1 million in upgrades, which our solar developers will happily pay. And again, that's why I say it's always a case-by-case basis, because they may have to invest a few million to get that substation upgrade, which will in turn affect that lease payment. But typically, people can see anywhere from $875 to $1,200 an acre as far as a lease payment goes. And that can obviously get much more attractive based on, like you said, that's why we kind of reverse engineer and back into deals where that lease payment might be much higher. And when we compare that with our checklist so that it looks like a good investment, those are the ones we actually work with investors on to purchase.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Dakota, what else? I mean, what are some other key points that we might not have hit on here today that you feel are relevant and important for the listeners to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good point, Kevin, is that the whole fact that leasing is not the only option. You said that there are people here that have maybe multi-location commercial property portfolios, or just manufacturing sites, C&I warehousing, where they're consuming a lot of electricity. The alternative is to consider taking on that power yourself and actually slashing your electricity costs over the next 20 to 25 years through what's called a power purchase agreement. So same exact concept is you can invest $0. So this is not a capital investment. A solar developer will come and build an asset, and then a power purchase agreement sounds exactly as it does. That specific property is choosing to purchase electricity at a fixed cost over the next 20 to 25 years as a way to hedge against electricity inflation. And this obviously contributes to more ESG and sustainability commitments that that specific company might have. And so the other big, factor to consider is if there's anybody listening who is looking for a hedge against inflation on a $0 investment, again, states like New York, Illinois, California. I'll give you an example. We're finalizing a PPA on one of the largest paper mills in the country in upstate New York. These guys are using, millions of dollars in electricity spent per year running their manufacturing site. And our PPA is essentially going to cut their electricity costs in half over the next 20 to 25 years. And basically the difference is those savings. And so they can create a massive amount of savings on a $0 investment. But again, the roof needs to be in part of the consideration. We're actually developing a sludge pit that they used to have. So this is land that was on their parcel, otherwise not usable because it's a sludge pit. And we're actually just going to build a solar farm, which is actually a PPA. They're going to take on the power. And so it's a very good case study of really the possibilities of commercial solar.
Interesting. Very cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Dakota, for those that want to learn more about you and the services that you provide, where's the best place to track you down?
Yes. So I create content on LinkedIn every single day. And so I always drive people to my LinkedIn because I am a long-term relationship person. I'm in the interest of actually talking to people and building that relationship, like I said. So you can go to linkedin.com/in/Dakota Malone, DAKOTA MALONE. I invite people to connect with me on LinkedIn. And always people can visit communitysolarauthority.com. We are finalizing our new website, which should be launched this week. And so people can go there and access any of the resources we talked about today, from the roof leasing guide to the land leasing guide and all of the other media that we put out there.
All righty. Fantastic, my friend. Well, Dakota, I appreciate you joining us today. It's been a lot of fun having you on the show.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care.